So we are coming back to The Great Gatsby Chapter 3, and the last time we read Chapter 2 was last week, but I am going to quickly summarize what happened, and then I'm going to start reading. So we know that Tom is having an affair, and we have met the woman that he is having an affair on, Myrtle Wilson, and her husband, George Wilson. They are the lowest of the low in that society, and they live in the Valley of Ashes, a very depressing and grim and dark place. And we also know that Nick Carraway doesn't have a spine, because rather than saying no to Tom and rather than not being bullied into that situation, in which he essentially is hanging out with the mistress, and Tom, he decided to just go along with it because that was more convenient. That's a really important quality about Nick. He is a people pleaser. We saw how Tom treats not Myrtle Wilson. We saw that Myrtle Wilson kind of dresses up and acts a certain persona that really isn't her. And obviously that quaint little party in this apartment away from East Egg, we saw kind of that level of class, and Myrtle trying to fit in, and also Tom being very defensive and upset because his conscience is kind of pricked. When Myrtle kept saying, Daisy, 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 Tom obviously is very defensive of his wife and hit Myrtle Wilson, essentially causing her nose to bleed. And then we had this beautiful line with Nick Carraway where he says, I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. And it's that perfect quote that sums him up as a narrator, because it shows that he is both enchanted and also disgusted by human nature. There's amazing things about human beings. There's amazing things about how they interact with each other. But then, just as he saw with the party, that little party in the apartment, there's also things that are just absolutely horrendous. And it's kind of his desire as the observer it's like a TV show that he can't look away from, this whole human nature thing. So please open up to chapter 3, and we are going to get started. This starts with Gatsby. This is the first time that we're actually meeting the Great Gatsby, and it is at a massive party that he throws at his house. And the thing that we need to know about Gatsby's party before I start reading about it is that they are absolutely lavish and extraordinary. Thousands upon thousands of dollars were spent. Everyone is invited, and even people who weren't invited still come, both from old money and new money, from East Egg, West Egg, New York City. And so it's kind of this perfect combination and small vision of society because everyone is there. But then the other question is, nobody really knows why he throws them. He's not inviting a specific group of people, so it's just these massive parties to just have a massive party. Usually there's some sort of reason. You're hanging out with friends, it's celebrating some birthday or event or occasion, and there is no rhyme or reason as to why Gatsby is throwing these things. So I'm going to start reading, and I want you guys to pay attention to this very light and airy language that Fitzgerald uses to describe this scene. And I'll point those out to you when we get there. So here we go, chapter 3. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. So already in that first 2 lines, you've got summer, right, which is light, airy, warm. You've got moths, so little, obviously insects that fly. You have whisperings and champagne. Champagne is a delicacy. It's, bubbly and filled with air. Stars and afternoon. And so there's this kind of wistful tone that he's setting that's associated with Gatsby's parties. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft, or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach while his 2 motorboats slit the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls-Royce became an omnibus, bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. And on Mondays, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. So again, it's this whole crew coming in to clean up these massive ragers, essentially. Every Friday, so the night before the party, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruitier in New York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the garden which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. On buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spiced baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs, and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail was set up, and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from another. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra had arrived. No thin 5-piece affair, but a whole pitful of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and low and high drums. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now, and are dressing upstairs. The cars from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors, and hair shorn in strange new ways, and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. Castile is a city in France. Not France, sorry, Spain. The bar is in full swing, and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot, and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. So again, you've got fruit coming in for all of the alcoholic drinks. You've got people who have gone swimming in the afternoon and get ready in Gatsby's mansion for the party in that evening. You've got thousands of cars just lined up in the driveway. And then I think you'll start to notice that nobody knows each other at these parties, right? It says women were so excited and greeted each other even though they didn't know who the person's name was. And there would be casual introductions and innuendos of like later affairs that would be forgotten on the spot. So it's all this heightened and falsified sense of belonging and community that comes with these large parties. So I'm going to continue. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun, and now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music, and the opera of voices pitches in key higher. Laughter is easier minute by minute, spilled with prodigality, tipped out with a cheerful word. So again, the more that they drink, the easier conversations come, and the easier the laughter comes. The groups change more swiftly, swell with new arrivals, dissolve and form in the same breath. Already there are wanderers, confident girls who weave here and there among the stouter and more stable, become for sharp, joyous moment the center of a group, and then, excited with triumph, glide on through the sea change of faces and voices and color under the constantly changing lights. So you've got these girls who are just confident and like being the center of attention, and once they're the center of attention of one group, they feel the success and they move on to another group. So again, there's this idea of vanity and people being obsessed with their image as well. Suddenly, one of these gypsies, so again, people who move around a lot, in trembling opal, seizes a cocktail out of the air, dumps it down for courage, and, moving her hands like Frisco, so dancer, dances out alone on the canvas platform. A momentary hush. The orchestra leader varies his rhythm obligingly for her, and there is a burst of chatter as the erroneous news goes around that she is Gilda Gray's understudy from the Follies. The party has begun. So the music is changing, people are starting to dance. I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited. They went there. They got into automobiles which bore them out to Long Island, and somehow they ended up at Gatsby's door. Once they were introduced by somebody who knew Gatsby, and after that they conducted themselves according to the rules of behavior associated with amusement parks. Sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all, came from the party with a simplicity of heart that was its own ticket of admission. I had actually been invited. So this is a point of pride for Nick, right? All these people just come and go. Nobody's invited, but he was. And again, he's very, very proud of that fact. A chauffeur in uniform of robin's egg blue crossed my lawn early that Saturday morning with a surprisingly formal note from his employer. The honor would be entirely Gatsby's, it said, if I would attend his little party that night. He had seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but peculiar combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed, J. Gatsby, in a majestic hand. So very, very elaborate signature. Dressed up in white flannels, I went over to his lawn a little after 7, and wandered around rather ill at ease among swirls of eddies of people I did not know, though here and there was a face I had noticed on the commuting train. I was immediately struck by the number of young Englishmen dotted about, all well-dressed, all looking a little hungry, and all talking in low, earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. I was sure that they were selling something, bonds of insurance or automobiles. They were at least agonizingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity, and convinced that it was theirs for a few words in the right key. As soon as I arrived, I made an attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way, and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements, that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone. I was on my way to get roaring drunk from sheer embarrassment, when Jordan Baker came out of the house and stood at the head of the marble steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down the garden. So you have Nick. He's all by himself. He knows nobody. He recognizes some people, and all he's trying to do is to find Gatsby. But as you can tell, he's asking people, and one, people have either never met Gatsby or they have no idea where he is. And so, he does as any single man would do, and he just hangs out where the drinks are, hoping that he looks like he has a purpose. And then Jordan Baker comes. And Jordan Baker at this point in the time in the story is the only person that has actually ever met Gatsby, and the only person that, remember, in chapter 1 has mentioned him. Welcome or not, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should begin to address cordial remarks to the passers-by. "Hello!" I roared, advancing toward her. My voice seemed unnaturally loud across the garden. "I thought you might be here," she responded absently as I came up. "I remembered you lived next door, too." She held my hand impersonally, as a promise that she'd take care of me in a minute, and gave ear to two girls in twin yellow dresses, who stopped at the foot of the steps. "Hello!" they cried together. "Sorry you didn't win." That was for the golf tournament. She had lost in the finals the week before. "You don't know who we are," said one of the girls in yellow, "but we met you here about a month ago." "You've dyed your hair since then," remarked Jordan, and I started. But the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the premature moon, produced, like the supper, no doubt, of the caterer's basket. With Jordan's slender golden arm resting in mine, we descended the steps and sauntered about the garden. A tray of cocktails floated us through the twilight, and we sat down at a table with the 2 girls in yellow and 3 men, each one introduced to us as Mr. Mumble. "Do you come to these parties often?" inquired Jordan of the girl beside her. The last one was the one I met you at," answered the girl, in alert, confident voice. She turned to her companion. "Wasn't it for you, Lucille?" It was for Lucille, too. "I like to come," Lucille said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Inside of a week, I got a package from Croyer's with a new evening gown in it." "Did you keep it?" asked Jordan. "Sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was gas blue with lavender beads, $265. So back then, $265 for a dress is a lot of money. Like a lot of money. And we have to note, we learn about Gatsby through what everyone else is telling us about him. And so we've never met him. We don't know and can't judge on our own. But the fact that a girl who he doesn't know has torn her dress and ruined it at his party, and he goes out of his way to get her address and buy a new dress and send that to her, tells us something about his character. One of the easiest things that we can assume from this is that he doesn't want anybody to have any issues with him. He wants his reputation to be somebody who is a gentleman, who goes out of his way to make people comfortable and feel as if they belong and to feel as if they are special. And if that's happening with some random stranger who he doesn't know, then we can assume those things will be the same when it comes to Nick Carraway, his neighbor, and somebody who may have more of an interest with him than anybody else for reasons we will discover later.